Friends, welcome to virtual Sunday worship with First Parish in Framingham. I am the Reverend Aaron Stockwell, Senior Minister, and it is an honor, a privilege, and a deep joy of mine to serve your community in this way. The First Parish in Framingham is a welcoming congregation. We celebrate and welcome people of all sexual orientations, races, ages, gender identities, abilities, or beliefs. I say this each time we gather because it matters deeply. Whoever you are, whoever you love, wherever you are on life's journey, dear one, you are welcome here. You may come to this morning, or whenever you are watching this service, weary from the week. You are welcome here. You may come this morning, or whenever you watch this, with a cup of coffee, or with kids demanding your attention. You are welcome here. You may come this morning lonely and seeking community. You are also welcome here. Since 1701, people have gathered as this congregation, seeking peace and seeking meaning. Those people are kind of like you. You belong here, maybe only for the next hour, but we hope for longer. You belong here, and we are so happy to have you with us. Our virtual coffee hour will happen as soon as our service concludes. And if you're watching this live, there is also a special cottage meeting to discuss the 2020 and 2021 budget. Instructions for how to join coffee hour are shown on the final screen.
Change is coming. What do we need to imagine? Change is coming. What do we need to imagine? 'Cause I know from brokenness there's hope. I know from brokenness there's hope. Change is coming. What do we need to imagine? Change is coming. What do we need to imagine? To be prepared. I know I'm scared to be prepared. I know I'm scared. I know from brokenness there's hope. I know from brokenness there's hope. Change is coming. What do we need to imagine? To be change is coming. I know. What do we need to imagine? To be prepared. I know. From brokenness there's hope. To be prepared. I know. From brokenness there's hope. 'Cause I know. Change is coming. What do we need to imagine? Change is coming. What do we need to imagine? Change is coming. What do we need to imagine? Change is coming. What do we need to imagine? 'Cause I know from brokenness there's hope. I know from brokenness there's hope. Change is coming. What do we need to imagine? Change is coming. What do we need to
This morning, I light the chalice with these words by the Reverend Amy Williams Clark. We gather in this time of uncertainty, full of unknowns as angst closes in upon us. We light this chalice with a flame that draws us together. With this flame, we cut through the dankness of isolation and are warmed by the fires of our interconnection. For this moment, this radical moment, we find a certainty within the knowable bonds of love and community. Physical rituals that we undergo apart help bind us together. After you have lit the chalice in your home, I invite you to type into the chat box, "The chalice is lit in our home," or "The chalice is lit in my home."
From all that dwell below the skies, let songs of hope and faith arise. Let peace, goodwill on earth be sung, through every land, by every tongue.
Please join us in our words of affirmation. Love is the doctrine of this church.
The quest of truth is its sacrament, and service is its prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge in freedom, to serve all life with compassion, to the end that all souls shall grow into harmony with the divine. This is our great covenant, one with another and with our God.
Today I want to tell you a story about resiliency. It's kind of a big word. Resiliency is a feeling, a way of being, even when things are really tough. It's the way that you get back up again. It's the way that you get back to work again. And so today's story is called After the Fall, How Humpty Dumpty Got Back Up Again. And it's by Dan Sentat. My name is Humpty Dumpty. This was my favorite spot, high up on the wall. I know, it's an odd place for an egg to be, but I loved being close to the birds. Then one day, I fell. I'm sort of famous for that part. Folks called it the Great Fall, which sounds a little grand. It was just an accident, but it changed my life. Fortunately, all the king's men managed to put me back together again. Kings County Hospital, it says. There were some parts that couldn't be healed with bandages and glue. These birds. After that day, I became afraid of heights. I was so scared that it kept me from enjoying some of my favorite things. I walked past the wall every day, and I would think about climbing that ladder again. I really missed the birds and being high above the city, but I could just never do it because I knew that accidents can happen. I eventually settled for watching the birds from the ground. It wasn't the same, but it was better than nothing. Then one day, an idea flew by. Making planes was harder than I thought. It was easy to get cuts and scratches. But day after day, I kept trying and trying until I got it just right. My plane was perfect, and it flew like nothing could stop it. I hadn't felt that happy in a long time. It wasn't the same as being up in the sky with the birds, but it was close enough. Unfortunately, accidents happen. They always do. I almost walked away again. But then I thought about all the time that I had spent working on my plane and all the other things that I had missed. I decided I was going to climb that wall. But the higher I got, the more nervous I felt. I didn't want to admit it. I was terrified. I didn't look up. I didn't look down. I just kept climbing, one step at a time, until I was no longer afraid. Maybe now you won't think of me as that egg who was famous for falling. Crack, crack. Hopefully, you'll remember me as the egg who got back up. And learned how to fly. Friends, as we face the future and what we need to do, I hope that you remember that it's okay to be broken. It's okay to be scared, but it's also okay to start trying, to get to work, to do the thing that you need to do over and over again until you get it to as close as right as you possibly can. And then take it one step at a time. Eventually, we'll all be flying.
To this tapestry of a community, we each bring our joys and our sorrows, our milestones, happy and sad occasions. We know that joy shared is joy expanded, and sorrow shared can feel as though someone is lifting a burden. There will be prompts on the screen that will give better order to our sharing. Do remember this, friends. In this virtual space, privacy cannot be guaranteed. So do feel free to get in touch with me if there is something a little too tender to share that you wish to let me and others know about.
There is a love holding me. There is a love holding all that I love. There is a love holding all. I rest in this love. I rest in this love. There is a love holding us. There is a love holding all that we love. There is a love holding is a love holding us. There is a love holding all that we love. There is a love holding all. I rest in this love. We rest in this love.
Now is the time in our service that we set aside all of the other things in our life. We set them aside to focus on the things which weigh deepest on our hearts. So I invite you to center yourself in the ways that you know best. That might be planting your feet on the floor. That may be feeling the chair that is supporting you, or the bed. That may be turning your attention to your breath, or focusing on something that isn't the screen that you're watching me on. Focusing on the candle that you lit earlier, or a soft gaze elsewhere. O Spirit of life and love, seen in the molecule and the atom, heard in the voices of our friends and family, seen in those remaining leaves on the trees. You are known by many names or no name at all, but you call us each by our true first name, which is beloved. This time that we gather together, I give thanks for the people who make our experiment of democracy work. I'm talking about the people who work at the polls, who check your name off the list. I give thanks for the ballot counters, counting those little circles filled in with black marker. I give thanks for those people who volunteer or step up for that important work. I give thanks too for people who work voter registration drives, making sure that all who are eligible to vote can. This week has felt like a month, which would be no surprise to us. Feels like it's been a year. May we who are weary find rest and also find energy to go on, because there is work to do. May we have the courage to remind all those whose humanity has been denied that they have worth and dignity. And aside from reminding those people, may we put an end to the oppressive words and oppressive policies that mean people's humanity is denied. May we be love's hands out in the world. That's what the work of justice is about. The arc of the moral universe bends towards justice, but not without our work. our hard work. May we have enough compassion to extend to all those who are mourning, all those who are ill, all those who are lonely, all of those people who live with mental illness or addiction. And may we give the support that we need and that they need. May we also extend that compassionate way of being towards healthcare workers. May they be safe, and may all those other essential workers be safe as our nation continues to battle the coronavirus. May we also extend compassion to ourselves. So often we fumble, we fall, we fail, sometimes epically. May we be reminded, and may you remind others who get hard on themselves that you are loved and lovable, not in spite of these imperfections, but because of them. Because we are breathing, because we are human, we can rebuild relationship. I say these words and do all things for love's sake. As we end this time of contemplation and meditation, let us take 3 comfortable breaths. The first breath is for your core, your deeply held values, the truths that you know deep in your bones. The second breath is for emergence, the emergence of new information, the truths that you are just learning. And the third breath is for imagination and courage to do the new things that we will do, that dance with our deeply held values and our new emerging values. Friends, the ongoing work of this congregation in our time of virtual gathering depends so deeply on your generosity. My colleague, the Reverend Kayla Parker, writes these words. We know that our financial contributions to this congregation come from sacrifice and hard work. We are so grateful for this and commit together to ensure the funds we gather collectively do a greater good for ourselves and our world than they could have done alone. May there be an offering to sustain and grow the life and mission of this congregation. May we give in love and in hope. This morning's reading is titled How to Survive the Apocalypse by the Reverend Sean Parker Dennison. First, learn to listen, not only for enemies around corners and hidden places, but for the faint footsteps of hope and the whispers of resistance. Hone your skills, aim your heart toward kindness, and stockpile second chances under the weight of destruction. We will need the strong shelter of forgiveness and the deeper well that comes with the sweet water of welcome. We have a place for you. When the world ends, we must not add destruction to destruction, not accept a beggar's bargain, to fight death with more death. In order to survive the apocalypse, or any apocalypse at all, we have to give up the counterfeit currency of self-sufficiency, the mistaken addiction to competition, the lie that the last to die has somehow survived. I wrote this sermon on Friday morning and recorded it in the afternoon of Friday as well. So, depending on when you are watching this, there will likely be things that may feel out of date. But I think there will also be things that are still very true. No matter the result of the election, what is clear to me is that there is work to do. What work? Well, we have to start small. Don't forget that the work continues. Resist the temptation to put things in a binary, to paint things in red and blue. We must be prophetic, and we must focus and conserve our energy. Now, over the last several days, I've spoken with a few of you who have expressed dismay that so many of your fellow voters in the United States voted for a particular candidate. Dismay that so many people want to take away the rights of gay and lesbian couples. So many who agree with a man who rejects the findings of science. Dismay with so many who agree with a racist president. who believe that their individual freedom to not wear masks overrides a concern for the collective good. Friends, I too am dismayed. I wanted an outright repudiation of racism, homophobia, xenophobia, and all of the other things that are in this world, injustices. So what do we do now? We must start small to change hearts and minds. We must work in our own circles to show people truths that we know, that the work of undoing systemic racism is work for all of us, that women deserve the right to make decisions over their own bodies, that love is a beautiful and a precious thing, and that same-gender couples deserve the protections that straight couples enjoy, that climate change is real, and that the majority of this is the result of large corporations. Yes, our own individual efforts are also important. We must tell others that people who live with disabilities deserve accommodations which allow them to live complete lives, that trans people are beautiful just as they are. But that work isn't just about believing those things, friends. It is about living in a way that everyone knows that they are true. Your actions preach a louder sermon than your words. Why must we start small and work to create communities that believe these things? Because you cannot change a large system without first creating smaller communities that believe in inherent worth and dignity. Smaller communities that are actively co-creating a beloved community, that are actively repairing and restoring this beautiful and broken world. All of this is true to start small because of the truth that we know about fractals, which we learned from Adrienne Marie Brown, who learned from Octavia Butler. Brown reminds us that Octavia was concerned with scale, understanding that what happens at the interpersonal level is a way to understand the whole of society. In many of Octavia's books, she shows us how radical ideas spread through conversation, questions, one-on-one interactions. Social movements right now are also fractal, practicing at a small scale what we want to see at the universal level. No more growth or scaling up before actually learning through experience. Brown builds emergent strategy from a love of the natural world, creating what she calls biomimicry, which is the imitation of the models, systems, and elements of nature for the purpose of solving complex human problems. If you want to change a society, first start with your families of blood. Or if that is challenging, start with families of choice. Brown reminds us small-scale solutions impact the whole system. No matter what, the work continues. It would have continued no matter who is president, governor, mayor, or minister. Yes, the person in that role determines the roadmap, but there will still always be work to do. And also, even if the results don't turn out the way one wanted, remember and celebrate smaller wins, ballot initiatives that passed, increasing diversity in our state legislatures and in our Congress as well. Why? Again, because small-scale wins impact the whole system. We plant seeds. We start small with the circles that we are in because, as the Tao Te Ching reminds us through Jia Fufeng and Jane English's translation, cultivate virtue in yourself, and virtue will be real. Cultivate it in the family, and virtue will abound. Cultivate it in the village, and virtue will grow. Cultivate it in the nation, and virtue will be abundant. Cultivate it in the universe, and virtue will be everywhere. Therefore, look at the body as body. Look at the family as family. Look at the village as village. Look at the nation as nation. Look at the universe as universe. And even if the work and the world feels large, it's because it is, and because it's important. We must appreciate the wisdom we also gain from Pirkei Avot. It is not your duty to finish the work, but neither are you at liberty to neglect it. The Pirkei Avot is a collection of ethical teachings from the rabbinic Jewish tradition. It is neither your duty to finish the work, but neither are you at liberty to neglect it. The Catholic Bishop of Saginaw, Ken Unterner, wrote about it from a slightly different camera angle. It helps, he writes, now and then to step back and take a long view. The kingdom is not only beyond our efforts, it is even beyond our vision. We accomplish in our lifetime only a tiny fraction of the magnificent enterprise that is God's work. Nothing we do is complete, which is a way of saying that the kingdom always lies beyond us. We plant the seeds that one day will grow. We water seeds already planted, knowing that they hold future promise. We lay foundations that will need further development. We provide yeast that produces far beyond our capabilities. We cannot do everything. And there is a sense of liberation in realizing that. That enables us to do something and to do it very well. I think that some of the other work that must take place now, no matter what, is to resist the urge to believe in binaries, because they obscure more than they clarify. What do I mean by this? I mean resist the urge to paint states red and blue. By doing so, we ignore the amazing on-the-ground work that is taking place by way of organizing in the poor communities, in the Black and Indigenous communities, in the immigrant communities, in the queer communities, and in the disability communities. Friends, I was guilty of this red and blue thinking when I moved to Texas, having grown up here in Massachusetts. I thought that it would be backwards and conservative. And while it certainly was conservative, I learned something. In my 3 years as the minister in College Station, Texas, I learned about the powerful work being done in the immigrant communities in the Roman Catholic parish. I learned about the deep power and need for community centers for LGBTQ people. When I moved to Kansas and served there for 3 years in Lawrence, I learned about the powerful organizing that the Poor People's Campaign had done, especially working to expand Medicaid, and how a conservative state senate there prevented that expansion. I will own up to the fact that my comfort in these states is likely because I benefit from unearned white privilege, that I was employed and was paid fair compensation, which included health insurance. I will own that my comfort was due to the fact that I am heterosexual and cisgender. But I lift up these voices so that we know that progressive work everywhere matters in these red states, as does our liberal religious tradition. There is such powerful work being done that we will never know about if we write off an entire region or state or county as red. There is injustice unheard of as well when we paint a state as blue. I think about some of the stories I've heard about this congregation, of white members of this congregation posing as couples who were interested in buying a house to help Black couples purchase homes when realtors would discriminate based on race. We must also be prophetic in two ways. Now, some of you may think about prophets and prophecy and write that off immediately, saying no one can see the future. And that's not what I'm referring to when I say we must be prophetic. When I say we must be prophetic, I say, and I mean, we must be prophetic in the way that James Luther Adams refers to. James Luther Adams was perhaps the Unitarian Universalist theologian of the 20th century. He was a professor at Harvard Divinity School, among other seminaries. He wrote this: "The prophetic liberal church is not a church in which the prophetic function is assigned merely to a few. The prophetic liberal church is the church in which persons think and work together to interpret the signs of the times in the light of their faith, to make explicit through discussion the epical thinking that the times demand. The prophetic liberal church is the church in which all members share the responsibility to attempt to foresee the consequence of human behavior, both individual and institutional, with the intention of making history in place of merely being pushed around by it. Only through the prophetism of all believers can we together foresee doom and mend our common ways." Whew. What does that mean? A professor of mine in seminary put it slightly differently. Gregory Mobley would say, it's not about seeing the future, it's about seeing through the present. We must also be prophetic in the way that Walter Brueggemann writes about. He says, the task of prophetic ministry is to nurture, nourish, and evoke a consciousness and perception alternative to the consciousness and perception of the dominant culture around us. He also wrote this, which I read last week, but deserves repeating. The prophet engages in futuring fantasy. The prophet does not ask if the future cannot be implemented, for questions of implementation are of no consequence until the vision can be imagined. The imagination must come before the implementation. Our culture is competent to implement almost anything and to imagine almost nothing. The same royal consciousness that made it possible to implement anything and everything is the one that shrinks imagination, because imagination is a danger. Thus, every totalitarian regime is frightened of the artist. It is the vocation of the prophet to keep alive the ministry of imagination, to keep on conjuring and proposing futures alternative to the single one the king wants to urge as the only thinkable one. That work is all of ours. And still I feel hope. Hope in a different sense. Hope in the sense that Miguel de la Torre, a progressive Baptist theologian, writes about, when he reminds us that the English sense of the word hope implies a kind of pausing in anticipation of something good that is about to be revealed. De la Torre reminds us that the Spanish word for hope, esperar, means something drastically different: to wait in apprehension of either good or evil. Here is what I know is also true. We must focus our energy. One of my enduring metaphors about ministry is that of the lighthouse and the lighthouse keeper. So enduring that it is on this stole that I'm wearing. Lighthouses and other beacons were positioned along the shoreline to help mariners and sailors orient themselves, and to prevent them from entering into dangerous shoals. They did this. Lighthouses did this by shining their light. However, a candle shining on its own, or even an oil lamp or an electric bulb, does not shine very far. Lighthouses in the United States, starting in the mid-19th century, used these lenses called Fresnel lenses, which direct the light that is shining from the top and the bottom towards the center, into a beam, which can be used by mariners and sailors. This redirecting and refocusing allows the light to shine brighter and therefore farther. Churches can be used as beacons to help people orient themselves and figure out how to move through the world and perhaps to bring more justice. Now, I sometimes think of ministry as lighthouse keeping, because the lights need work to keep going and repair on the mechanisms to keep them shining so that the beacon can find their way throughout the world. I sometimes think of ministry as lighthouse keeping, keeping the lights going and the mechanisms working correctly so that all who need this beacon, all who need help to find their way through the world can get it, to refocus our energy. Our work also needs to be refueled. It needs to be kept up. Even the brightest beacon will go out if it isn't repaired properly, if it isn't refueled. And this could be individuals or communities doing important social justice work. They need rest. My friends who are watching this on separate screens, remember this: you are a part of a community. Start small. Don't forget that the work continues. Resist the urge to create binaries. Be prophetic. Focus and conserve your energy. May it be so. As we leave this virtual gathering space, let us leave with this truth in our minds and on our hearts. Take courage, friends. The way is often hard, the path is never clear, and the stakes are very high. Take courage, for deep down, there is another truth. You are not alone. I now invite you to extinguish the flames you have lit in your homes, as I extinguish the flame of our chalice. As the flame goes out, let the smoke waft through the air for just a moment. And I invite you to type into the chat box, "I carry the flame."